My water broke at 2:15 in the morning, spreading across our bedroom floor, while my husband slept 3 feet away. I shook him awake. "Brian, the baby's coming." He pulled the blanket over his shoulder. "I have a 9 o'clock presentation. Call an ambulance." I thought I'd misheard him. Another contraction locked across my stomach, and I gripped the dresser to stay upright. And still he lay there, eyes half closed, telling me I'd had months to prepare for this. My name is Claire Morgan. I was 44, a school librarian in Carmel, Indiana, and I had spent 7 years fighting to become a mother. Specialists, injections, 2 miscarriages I still couldn't talk about. When I finally got pregnant with Ethan, through our last round of IVF, I was afraid to even buy baby clothes until the 3rd trimester. Brian knew every bit of that history. The day before I went into labor, he'd posted a photo of his hand on my belly with the caption, "Can't wait to meet our little man." 10 minutes later, he was complaining that the $400 nursing chair I'd bought on sale was too expensive, warm in public, cold in private. I'd spent months finding reasonable explanations for it. That night, I ran out of them. I called 911 from the hallway. When the dispatcher asked if my husband could drive me, I said no. He had work in the morning. And I heard, in the pause that followed, exactly how that sounded to a stranger. I was changing into sweatpants when Rosa Delgado, my 68-year-old widowed neighbor, came hurrying across the street in her bedroom slippers. She took one look at our dark house, at me alone on the porch, and asked where Brian was. When I couldn't answer, she took my bag from my hand and rode in the ambulance with me, forgetting her own purse. 3 hours into labor, Ethan's heart rate dropped. They rushed me into an emergency C-section. He was born at 6:41 a.m., 6 pounds 8 ounces, furious and red-faced, and I laughed and cried at the same time, while Brian's phone sat silent. He didn't text until 12:47 that afternoon. 6 words. Did everything go okay? No call. No question about his son's weight. A night nurse named Denise adjusted Ethan's blanket and told me, in her 32 years on the floor, people always find a reason not to come. But the one in the bed never forgets who did. Brian didn't visit for 7 days. When he finally knocked, dressed in a suit with polished shoes, no trace of exhaustion on him, I asked him through the gap in the door, "What, son?" He looked at me like I'd spoken another language. "My mother keeps asking for pictures," he said. "Not." I missed him. "Not? How are you?" "Pictures." I let him in for 10 minutes. He held Ethan like a package he was afraid to drop, took selfies angled to include his own face, and posted one that night captioned, "My whole world finally arrived. 200 likes. Natural-born dad," a coworker wrote. Meanwhile, I was crying on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., unable to remember if I'd taken my pain medication, my C-section incision burning every time I stood. Rosa kept showing up despite her arthritic knees. Soup, folded laundry, a hand resting near Ethan's feet when she couldn't hold him for long. My mother, 73, and recovering from hip surgery, called twice a day from Dayton, wishing she could do more. Brian did less and less. When our shared credit card got declined buying formula, he brushed it off as a bank error. I didn't wait for his explanation. I logged into our accounts myself. The card was nearly maxed. Restaurant charges in Chicago, Nashville, downtown Indianapolis, 2 hotel stays, a jewelry purchase 3 days before Ethan was born. Weekends he'd told me he was in Louisville, the charges said Chicago. I built a spreadsheet. Dates, locations, his explanations, what didn't add up. That's when the old family iPad, still logged into an account he'd forgotten, lit up at 12:18 a.m., with a message from someone named Kendra Shaw. "Once the baby comes, Claire will be too exhausted to notice anything." I opened the thread. Hotel confirmations, photos of jewelry, complaints about me, and then the sentence that changed everything. "She won't leave now. She worked too hard to get pregnant." He hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been counting on motherhood to trap me in it. I called a divorce attorney, Margaret Sullivan, and told her I didn't want a war. I wanted my son to never learn that love means accepting whatever's done to you. Margaret was calm, sharp, unimpressed by drama. She explained that Indiana was a no-fault state. Brian wouldn't lose custody for cheating. What mattered was evidence, involvement, spending, risk to the child. You cannot use Ethan as revenge, she told me. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay credible. We filed. Margaret requested temporary primary custody, since Ethan was a newborn still breastfeeding, and asked the court to freeze large asset transfers until the finances could be reviewed. Nothing dramatic, just careful. Life at home, meanwhile, was brutal in its own quiet way. 2-hour feeding cycles, sitting on the floor because standing hurt too much, wondering if I'd somehow failed to see this coming sooner. Brian got served on a Thursday. He called within 15 minutes, furious, then showed up that evening with grocery bags like a man auditioning for Husband of the Year. "We don't have to rush this divorce," he said. "My bonus gets paid in 3 months. It'll help all of us. Not our marriage, not our son. Money." I asked if Kendra was included in that plan, and set the printed screenshots on the table. His face went through several expressions before landing on nothing at all. "You were different," he told me. "I was pregnant," I said. "I stopped being convenient," was the truth, and I said that instead. Digging further, I found hotel charges that matched reimbursement deposits from his employer. A dinner listed as a physician appreciation meal, a bracelet for Kendra logged as a client gift, a resort weekend filed under a conference that never existed. I brought it to Margaret. She was clear. We weren't sending this to his company ourselves. We just requested full financial disclosure through discovery. If the numbers were real, his employer would find them on their own. A week later, panicking, Brian drained thousands from our savings and canceled a shared card, leaving me under $200 for daycare deposits and legal fees. I sold my grandmother's pearl bracelet and cried in the parking lot, not for the bracelet, but because I finally understood what this fight would cost me. 2 days after that, Margaret called. His company had opened an internal investigation. "You weren't the only person he thought was too tired to check the receipts," she said. By the custody hearing, Ethan was 5 months old, discovering his hands, laughing when Rosa sang to him. A week before court, Brian showed up unannounced, demanding extra time, then admitted he planned to strap our infant into whatever car seat I had, since he hadn't brought one of his own. When I refused to hand Ethan over outside our agreed schedule, he called the police. 2 Carmel officers arrived. I had a folder ready: court filings, canceled visits, pediatric appointments. The older officer asked Brian who Ethan's pediatrician was. He didn't know. What formula Ethan drank. Silence. Rosa walked in mid-conversation, took one look, and told the officers she knew Ethan's nap schedule, his diaper size, and which stuffed rabbit he slept with, and that she'd never once seen Brian carry a diaper bag. The officers told him this was a family court matter and left. At the hearing 8 days later, Brian arrived in an expensive new suit, his mother Patricia and, unexpectedly, Kendra sitting behind him. His attorney painted him as an overworked father, unfairly shut out by an unstable new mother. Then Margaret stood and laid it out without raising her voice. The 911 call at 2:17 a.m., the ambulance report, hospital records showing Brian never came, the 6-word text, the 7 days before his first visit, my caregiving journal, the canceled appointments, the financial statements. None of it alone was dramatic. Together, it told the whole story. Rosa testified that she'd heard him snoring through the upstairs window, while paramedics carried me down the front steps. When Brian took the stand and claimed he thought I wanted space, Margaret asked one question: if he believed we were fine, why did it take 7 days to visit? He had no answer. During a recess, his phone rang. He came back changed. His employer had finished its audit. False business justifications on hotel stays, gifts, meals, mileage. His company car, credit card, and management role were suspended pending termination. Kendra stood without a word and walked out. Patricia asked her son if he'd really used company money. His silence answered her. The judge granted me primary physical custody, gave Brian short, structured visits, contingent on consistency, required us to communicate only through a co-parenting app, froze major asset transfers, and ordered him to complete infant care classes before any overnight visits. Outside, Brian caught up to me in the parking garage, accusing me of turning his company against him. I handed my lawyer the truth, I told him. I wanted my son to grow up knowing actions have consequences. The divorce was final, 8 months after Ethan was born. It didn't feel like the ending people imagine. No gavel-drop closure, just ordinary life continuing to demand things while I was still carrying extraordinary hurt. Brian lost his management job once the audit confirmed nearly 2 years of falsified expenses. No handcuffs, no headlines, just a quieter fall. He landed a lower-paying sales job at a small medical supply company in Fishers. No car, no team, no expense account, and had to repay part of what he'd taken. I sold my SUV for a used Civic to cover legal fees and daycare. The first morning I dropped Ethan at Town Meadow Elementary, where I worked. I cried the whole drive in, not from distrust, just from missing him already. Unlocking the library that morning, surrounded by the smell of books and kids asking about dinosaurs, reminded me life kept growing even after being broken. At home, things steadied. My mother recovered enough to visit and fold laundry while Ethan crawled around her. Rosa's arthritis worsened that winter, so instead of holding him, she let him crawl to her, crackers in one pocket, a board book in the other, calling him her little library assistant. Family, I realized, had stopped meaning last names and rings. It meant who showed up, repeatedly, without being asked. Even Brian changed, slowly. His court-ordered parenting classes humbled him. He started asking real questions: how long to warm a bottle, what a rash looked like, not to perform fatherhood anymore, but to actually learn it. Trust never came back. It couldn't. But the hostility eventually gave way to plain, workable boundaries. On Ethan's first birthday, I booked the children's room at the Carmel Clay Public Library. It felt right, since books had carried me through every hard stretch of my life. My coworkers came, my mother, Rosa, even Denise, the maternity nurse, stopping by after a night shift because she'd remembered the invitation. Brian arrived exactly on time with a small wooden shape sorter, no cameras, no selfies. He knelt beside Ethan and helped him fit the blocks in, and for the first time, nobody was performing for an audience. Afterward, in the hallway, he asked if we could talk. I wasn't tired that night, he said. I was selfish. I missed the most important day of my son's life. I let the silence sit before I answered. I don't spend my days hating you anymore. But the woman who begged you to wake up that night, she doesn't exist anymore. He nodded, said he knew, said he didn't expect things to go back. They couldn't. Through the glass, Ethan sat on Rosa's lap while my mother read to him. 3 generations with no blood connecting them, held together by nothing but who kept showing up. That night, standing in my son's doorway after everyone had gone home, I thought about how I used to believe love was measured in promises. I know better now. It's measured in presence, in who answers the phone before dawn, who drives across town after surgery, who crosses the street on aching knees rather than let someone stand alone. Brian learned that lesson the hard way. So did I. And if this reminds you of someone who quietly stood beside you when it mattered most, tell them while you still can, because those are the moments that end up carrying you the farthest.